Three legendary gaming franchises just handed control to fresh creators, and the results are already dividing the community. Here's what's happening behind the scenes. The architects who built gaming's biggest franchises are retiring. We're talking about directors with 20, 30 years of creative control stepping away simultaneously. This isn't random. The industry is aging out, and studios are finally ready to promote the next wave of talent. These aren't fresh graduates either. They're seasoned developers who have shipped major titles but never held the top creative chair. The timing matters because franchises this massive can't just pause. They need continuity, and right now, that continuity is shifting from the original visionaries to their successors. That's the real story here. Final Fantasy just made one of the biggest leadership calls in gaming. After decades of the same creative vision steering the mainline series, Square Enix appointed a new creative director, and this isn't a lateral shift. This is the most significant leadership change since the franchise completely rebranded itself in the mid-2000s. The new director comes from outside the traditional Final Fantasy pipeline, which immediately signals that Square Enix wants something genuinely different, not just a safe iteration. Early concept art tells you everything you need to know. We're already seeing aesthetic choices that break from the recent formula. The visual direction is sharper. The character designs lean into a different era of inspiration, and the overall tone feels like it's deliberately stepping away from what fans have come to expect over the last 10 years. It's not a rejection of Final Fantasy's DNA, but it's a clear statement that the new leadership wants to experiment. Here's what matters. This is a high-wire act. Final Fantasy lives and dies on player investment in its world and characters. Bring in fresh blood, and you risk alienating the core audience who have stuck with the franchise through thick and thin. But play it too safe, and you're just repeating the same formula with a new name tag. The concept art suggests they're choosing the riskier path, and the community is already split on whether that's bold or reckless. Now here's where things get risky. Splinter Cell has always been defined by one thing: methodical stealth. You plan your approach, you control the pace, and you decide whether to go in silent or create a distraction. That's been the franchise's DNA since 2002, but the new leadership team taking over has never directed a Splinter Cell game before. They come from different franchises entirely, which means they're bringing fresh ideas, but also unfamiliar instincts. The concern isn't just theoretical. Early statements from the new creative leads suggest they want to speed up the gameplay loop and make encounters feel more dynamic. Faster-paced stealth sounds appealing on paper, but Splinter Cell fans built their loyalty on tension and control. When you strip that away, you're not really playing Splinter Cell anymore. You're playing a different game wearing Sam Fisher's goggles. Look at what happened when other stealth franchises tried to modernize too aggressively. The shift away from pure stealth gameplay alienated core players and confused newcomers about what the series actually was. Splinter Cell risks the same fate. The new team has proven they can make engaging games, just not necessarily engaging Splinter Cell games. That's the gamble here, and it's a big one. Here's where it gets real. These leadership changes matter because they sit at the intersection of two competing forces. On one side, you've got players who have invested decades in these franchises. They want evolution, sure, but not at the cost of what made these series matter in the first place. On the other, you've got a creative industry that desperately needs fresh perspectives to avoid becoming a museum of remakes and nostalgia bait. History gives us a roadmap here. Look at what happened when Naughty Dog passed The Last of Us to a new director. The community fractured hard, but the game still sold millions and pushed the medium forward. Or consider how Capcom's handed off Resident Evil multiple times, and each transition either revitalized or nearly killed the franchise depending on the creative choice made. The stakes for Final Fantasy, Splinter Cell, and whoever else is next are genuinely high. Get it right, and you've got a franchise that feels both familiar and urgent. Get it wrong, and you've handed your legacy to someone who doesn't understand why people loved it in the first place. The industry is watching these next releases extremely closely. So here's the real question. Can new creators inject fresh life into these franchises without losing what made them legendary in the first place? Innovation and nostalgia rarely coexist peacefully. The next 2 to 3 years will be absolutely critical. If these new leaders nail the balance, we're looking at a revitalized golden age. But if they stumble, we might watch some of gaming's greatest legacies fracture under the weight of change.